For 5 years, Clara Bell had heard the town call her too plain, too stubborn, and too old to ever be chosen by a man. At 31, she had learned there were insults that hurt less when repeated often enough. Too broad in the shoulders, too sun-browned, too quick to speak her mind, too capable with a hammer. Not soft enough, not pretty enough, not young enough anymore. Clara had stopped answering any of it. That Wednesday morning in September of 1888, she stood 14 feet above the ground, on the roof of her father's barn, with a square-cut nail clenched between her teeth and a hammer in one hand. The Montana wind pulled loose strands of chestnut hair from the knot at the back of her neck. Below her, 6 cattle shifted uneasily inside the corral. The barn roof had begun sagging along the eastern wall 3 days earlier. One of the main beams had split, and every strong gust drove the structure a little farther toward collapse. Clara knew exactly what would happen if she failed. The autumn storms would come. The roof would go first, then the eastern wall, and after that, she would have nowhere to shelter the cattle through winter. Without the cattle, there would be no mortgage payment in spring. Without the payment, there would be no Bell Ranch. Everything her father had spent 30 years building would disappear because one old barn had finally decided it could stand no longer. Clara drove the nail. Once, twice. A third blow seeded it into the weathered pine. "Still trying, Clara?" The voice came from the road. She closed her eyes. Of course. She looked toward the fence. 3 riders had stopped beside her property. Earl Dawson sat in front, wearing a clean brown coat that had probably never seen an honest day's work. His father owned Dawson Mercantile, and half the notes owed by struggling ranchers around Cedar Ridge. Beside him were Will Porter and Samuel Briggs. All 3 were smiling. Clara returned her attention to the roof. "Morning, gentlemen." Earl leaned against his saddle horn. "My father says that barn isn't worth repairing." "Then it's fortunate your father doesn't own it." Will laughed. Earl's smile tightened. "Man offered to buy this place twice. And I refused him twice. Could save yourself a lot of trouble." Clara moved carefully along the roof beam. Earl raised his voice. "Or maybe you're waiting for a husband to come along and do all this for you." Samuel chuckled. Clara struck another nail. "If I waited for a man like you, Earl, the whole ranch would rot before he finished admiring his boots." Will barked with laughter before catching himself. Earl's face hardened. That was the trouble with Clara Bell. She didn't know when a woman was supposed to lower her eyes. "You know what folks say about you?" Clara stopped hammering. She knew. Everyone in Cedar Ridge knew. They had begun calling her the unwanted Belle, after Henry Callahan married someone else 5 years earlier. Henry had courted Clara for nearly a year. At least, Clara had believed he had. Then one winter morning he announced his engagement to the banker's daughter. He had explained it kindly. Clara was practical, reliable, strong, but he wanted a wife who made a home feel warm, rather than a woman who could repair a wagon axle better than most men. By supper, half the town knew. By Sunday, all of it did. After that came the whispers, then the jokes, then pity, which somehow felt worse than either. Earl continued. "They say nobody's ever going to marry a woman who acts like she doesn't need a husband." Clara looked down from the roof. "Then it's a good thing I didn't climb up here looking for one." Earl laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You'll lose this place by spring." "Maybe. And then what?" "I'll worry about spring when it arrives." The 3 riders eventually continued toward town. Their laughter followed them down the road. Clara waited until they disappeared beyond the cottonwoods, before allowing her shoulders to sag. She hated that their words still found the cracks. She hated even more that some small part of her wondered whether they were right. Not about the ranch, about her. Her mother had died when Clara was 12. Her father had never remarried, so Clara had learned the work that needed doing. She milked cows, mended fencing, drove cattle, managed accounts, delivered calves, shot coyotes, and learned early that survival rarely cared whether the hands doing the work belonged to a man or a woman. Her father had been proud of her. Cedar Ridge had not. When Thomas Bell died of pneumonia 18 months earlier, several neighbors had assumed Clara would sell immediately. She hadn't. They assumed she would fail by the first winter. She hadn't. Then by spring. Then summer. Now autumn approached again, and the barn was giving everyone another reason to wait for her defeat. Clara picked up another board. A low crack sounded beneath her. She froze. The roof shifted. Easy. The word escaped her lips like a prayer. The beam under her right boot groaned. Clara transferred her weight slowly. Another crack. Then the timber dropped 6 inches. Clara slid. The hammer flew from her hand. Her knee struck the roof. She caught the edge of a plank before tumbling toward the ground. For several seconds she hung there, breathing hard. Her palm burned where the wood had torn the skin. The cattle below scattered. Clara pulled herself upright. That was enough for one morning. She climbed down. When her boots touched the dirt, she examined the eastern wall. The damage looked worse from below. The roofline bowed in the center. Several supporting timbers had shifted. One more hard storm could bring half of it down. She needed help. The thought tasted bitter. Not because Clara believed she could do everything alone. She wasn't foolish. Some jobs required 2 sets of hands. But asking for help in Cedar Ridge meant giving the town exactly what it wanted. Proof. Still, pride would not feed cattle through winter. Clara washed the blood from her palm, wrapped it with cloth, saddled her mare, and rode toward town. Cedar Ridge consisted of a church, a schoolhouse, 2 saloons, a blacksmith, the Dawson Mercantile, a bank, and enough houses for several hundred people to know everyone else's troubles. By the time Clara tied her mare outside the mercantile, she could feel eyes following her. Earl had arrived before her. Of course he had. He stood near the stove telling the story of Clara nearly falling through her roof. His version apparently involved screaming. Clara pushed through the door. The conversation died. Mr. Dawson stood behind the counter. Miss Bell. Mr. Dawson. She placed a folded sheet of paper on the counter. I need lumber. He glanced at the list. This much? And nails. You still carrying an account? No. Cash. That disappointed him. He began totaling the order. Clara looked around the store. 4 ranch hands stood near the back. I'm looking to hire 2 men for 3 days. Nobody answered. $1.50 per day, plus meals. A fair wage. More than fair. One man suddenly became very interested in a barrel of flour. Another scratched his beard. Clara understood immediately. Someone had already spoken to them. She looked toward Earl. His grin confirmed it. Mr. Dawson cleared his throat. Men are busy this time of year. All of them? Seems so. Clara folded her arms. How fortunate. A few people looked away. Then a voice from beside the front window said, I'll do it. Everyone turned. Clara had noticed the man when she entered, but hadn't paid much attention to him. He sat alone on an overturned crate near the window. Tall, lean, dark hair touching the collar of a faded work shirt. A weathered hat rested beside him. His boots were dusty enough to suggest he had ridden a long distance. Clara knew his face. Everyone did. Nathan Cole. He had arrived in Cedar Ridge about 6 months earlier and taken seasonal work wherever it appeared. Fence repair, cattle drives, breaking horses. Nobody knew much about him because Nathan rarely spoke unless speaking was necessary. Quiet Cole, some called him. Others had darker names. There were rumors he'd killed a man in Wyoming. Rumors he'd abandoned a ranch somewhere south. Rumors he'd been in prison. Cedar Ridge had created all 3 stories simply because Nathan never bothered correcting them. Clara looked at him. You know barn work? Yes. You know how to brace a failing roof? Yes. $1.50. $1. Clara frowned. I'm offering $1.50. I heard you. Then why take less? Nathan stood and picked up his hat. Because you'll need the other 50 cents for timber. A small silence settled over the store. Earl scoffed. Cole, you don't want that job. Nathan looked at him. Didn't ask. Something about the way he said it ended the conversation. No threat. No raised voice. Just 2 words. Earl looked away first. Clara studied Nathan. Tomorrow morning? He shook his head. Storm coming tonight. Clara looked through the window. The western sky had darkened while she was inside. Tonight? Before midnight. She felt her stomach drop. How bad? Nathan put on his hat. Bad enough your barn won't make morning. Clara grabbed her order list. Mr. Dawson sighed. I can't have that lumber delivered before tomorrow. Nathan turned toward him. You've got a freight wagon out back. It isn't available. Nathan removed several coins from his pocket. How much to make it available? Mr. Dawson glanced at Earl. That was when Clara understood the whole game. No. She snatched the list from the counter. I won't beg for my own supplies. She walked outside. Behind her, she heard someone laughing. Maybe Earl. Maybe one of the ranch hands. She didn't turn around. Clara mounted her mare and rode hard for home. The first thunder rolled when she reached her gate. She dismounted and immediately began moving cattle from the barn into the small southern enclosure. The wind strengthened. Dust swept across the yard. Clouds consumed the mountains. She carried tools beneath the barn overhang and dragged 2 heavy timbers toward the eastern wall. If she could brace it from inside, perhaps the structure would hold until morning. Perhaps. The first drops of rain struck the dirt. Clara worked faster. A wagon approached from the road. She ignored it. Probably someone coming to watch. Then the wagon stopped beside the barn. Clara turned. Nathan Cole sat on the driver's bench. The freight wagon behind him was loaded with timber. Mr. Dawson's timber. Nathan climbed down. How? I bought it. You bought my lumber. You can pay me what you were going to pay Dawson. Clara stared. You didn't have to do that. Nathan began unloading a beam. I know. Another wagon appeared behind him. Then another. For one foolish second, Clara thought the town had changed its mind. It hadn't. People were gathering along the road. Earl Dawson, Will Porter, Samuel Briggs, others. Men and women stopped beneath umbrellas or sat inside wagons, watching, waiting. The spectacle had begun. Clara looked toward them. They came to see it fall. Nathan followed her gaze. Yes. The wind lifted his coat. Clara swallowed. I can manage from here. Nathan looked at the sagging roof. No. I don't want charity. Didn't offer any. I don't need the whole town saying you rescued me. Nathan's expression barely changed. Then don't call it rescue. Thunder cracked overhead. Clara looked at the people beyond the fence. She could already imagine tomorrow's conversation. Clara Bell finally needed a man. Clara Bell couldn't save her own ranch. Clara Bell wasn't as strong as she pretended. Her jaw tightened. Nathan walked toward the barn. Clara stepped in front of him. Why? He stopped. Why what? Why are you helping me? Rain began falling harder. Nathan looked toward the people gathered at the road, then back at Clara. Because they're waiting for you to fail. That isn't an answer. It is to me. Clara's throat tightened unexpectedly. Nathan removed his coat and hung it over the fence. Then he rolled his sleeves to his elbows and picked up the largest timber. Clara remained still. No one had ever stepped through that gate because they believed she could succeed. Men had offered advice, marriage, money, pity, offers to buy the ranch. Nobody had simply offered their hands. Nathan carried the beam toward the barn. Clara called after him. You don't have to stay. He stopped beneath the darkening sky. Behind them, the townspeople waited for the roof to collapse. Nathan looked back at her. I'll stay and help. Then he disappeared inside the barn. For the first time in years, Clara Bell stood completely speechless. The storm reached Bell Ranch before Clara could decide whether Nathan Cole's words comforted or frightened her. I'll stay and help. No promises. No grand speech. No attempt to make her feel helpless so he could feel strong. He had simply walked into the barn and started working. Clara followed him. The inside smelled of old hay, rain-soaked timber, and dust. Nathan stood beneath the failing eastern beam, looking upward. We brace this first. Clara grabbed the opposite end of the timber. You don't have to explain every step. I wasn't. She glanced at him. Was that humor? His expression gave nothing away. Together, they lifted the heavy support into place. Outside, wind slammed against the barn wall. The entire structure groaned. Nathan planted his shoulder against the brace. "Hold it." Clara drove 2 nails through the base. The first bent. She cursed quietly. Nathan almost smiled. "Something funny?" "No. You looked like you were smiling. Must have been lightning." Clara struck the next nail harder. For the next hour, they worked without stopping. Nathan reinforced the main beam while Clara secured the lower braces. Rain hammered the roof. Water leaked through cracks and ran down Clara's neck. Her dress clung to her arms. Nathan's shirt was soaked through. Neither mentioned it. From outside came the distant sound of voices. The townspeople were still there. Clara could hardly believe it. They haven't left? Nathan wedged another support beneath the roof. They're hoping for a better ending. For them or us? For them. The barn shook. A plank tore loose overhead and crashed into the hay. Clara jumped back. Nathan caught her arm. For 1 second, his hand remained around her wrist. Warm. Firm. Then he released her immediately. "You hurt?" "No." He looked at the scrape across her palm from earlier. "You were already hurt." "It's nothing." Nathan turned back toward the beam. That phrase usually means it's something. Clara stared at him. "You talk more than people say." "People say too much." Another gust struck. The eastern wall shifted inward. Nathan's face changed. "Out." "What?" "Clara. Out." She heard it too. A deep splitting sound above them. The main support beam had begun to crack. Clara looked toward the far stall. Her father's saddle still hung there. Beside it sat 2 wooden crates containing tools, records, and several things she had never found the courage to throw away. Nathan grabbed her elbow. "Move." "My father's things. The roof doesn't care." "I do." She pulled free. Nathan swore under his breath and followed her. Clara reached the stall and grabbed the saddle. Nathan lifted both crates at once. The roof screamed above them. "Go!" They ran. Clara reached the barn door as part of the eastern rafters collapsed behind them. A cloud of dust exploded through the building. Nathan stumbled. 1 crate fell. Clara dropped the saddle. "Nathan!" "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." A narrow cut had opened above his eyebrow. Rain washed the blood along his temple. He picked up the fallen crate. Outside. They carried everything into the yard. The crowd along the road reacted. When part of the roof sagged, someone shouted. Clara could not hear the words through the storm. She looked back at the barn. Nearly 1/4 of the roof had dropped. Her heart sank. Nathan set down the crates. "We can still save it." Clara laughed once. It sounded almost angry. "You just watched half the roof collapse." "Quarter. That's supposed to make me feel better?" "No." He pointed toward the remaining frame. "The main ridge is holding. For now." "For now is enough." Clara stared at him through the rain. Nobody had ever spoken to her that way. Not with false optimism. Not with pity. Just facts. For now is enough. Nathan walked toward the wagon. "Need another beam." Clara followed. "We can't lift that one in this wind." "We can. It took both of us 15 minutes to move the last one. This one's lighter. It's bigger. Dry cedar. You argue badly." Nathan looked at her. "You noticed." She almost laughed. Then thunder rolled again. They dragged the beam from the wagon. Across the road, Earl Dawson cupped his hands around his mouth. "Give it up, Clara." She froze. Nathan did not. He kept pulling. Earl shouted again. "You'll get yourself killed over a barn." Another voice called. "Dawson will buy the property tomorrow." Laughter followed. Something in Clara broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. She dropped her end of the timber. Nathan stopped. Clara turned toward the road. "My father built that barn." The wind swallowed half her words. She stepped closer to the fence. "He built it when there was nothing here but grass and dirt." The laughter faded. "He slept in that barn before he had a house. My mother milked cows in it when she was carrying me. I learned to ride in that yard." Rain streamed down Clara's face. "So if any of you came here hoping to watch me lose it, you can keep watching." She pointed toward the barn. Because it'll still be standing when you leave. Silence. Nathan watched her. Earl shook his head. Stubborn woman. Clara looked directly at him. Yes. For once, she said the word like a title. Then she turned back. Nathan was still holding the timber. You done? Clara picked up her end. Yes. Good speech. Don't start. I wasn't. Again, that almost smile. They carried the beam inside. This time, Nathan showed Clara exactly where to position it beneath the surviving ridge. They worked shoulder to shoulder. No audience mattered anymore. Not Earl. Not Dawson. Not Cedar Ridge. The storm reduced the world to two people, one failing barn, and the sound of hammers against timber. Hours passed. Clara lost track of time. Her arms began trembling. Nathan noticed. Rest. No. That wasn't a question. You're working for me. You're paying me $1. So, for $1, I'm allowed one opinion. Clara leaned against a post. That may be the worst contract I've ever made. Nathan handed her a canteen. She drank. He sat on an overturned bucket. For the first time all evening, neither moved. Rain drummed steadily overhead. Clara looked toward him. You really think it'll hold? Yes. You didn't even look. I've been looking at it for 4 hours. Clara lowered the canteen. Where did you learn all this? Nathan's face closed. Different places. That sounds like a man avoiding an answer. It is. Clara waited. Nathan said nothing more. She should have left it alone. Instead she asked, Did you own a ranch? His eyes shifted toward her. For the first time, she saw something underneath the calm. Pain. Gone almost immediately. No. A lie. Clara knew it. But she also knew what it felt like when strangers believed grief, gave them permission to ask questions. So she nodded. All right. Nathan looked surprised. You're not going to ask again? Not tonight. Why? Because you didn't ask why Henry Callahan didn't marry me. Nathan frowned. Who? Clara laughed. A real laugh this time. You truly don't listen to town gossip. No. That may be your finest quality. Nathan looked down at his hands. Thought it was my carpentry. Second finest. The barn creaked. Both looked upward. The braces held. Outside, the rain finally began to weaken. The crowd along the road had thinned. Most had gone home. Only Earl and 2 others remained. Nathan rose. One more brace. Clara stood. They finished it together. By the time the storm moved east, it was past midnight. The roof was damaged. The eastern wall leaned slightly. Several boards were gone. But the barn stood. Clara walked outside. Clouds broke apart above the valley. Moonlight appeared between them. Water dripped from the eaves. She looked at the barn for a long moment. Still standing. Nathan came beside her. Told you. Clara folded her arms. Don't ruin the moment. He removed his hat and wiped rain from his face. A thin line of dried blood remained near his eyebrow. You should clean that. So should you. He nodded toward her palm. She had forgotten the wound. The cloth was dark with blood and rain. It's fine. There's that phrase again. Clara sighed. Inside the house, she lit a lamp and found clean cloth. Nathan stopped at the doorway. I'll sleep in the barn. The barn nearly killed you. I've had worse rooms. You're not sleeping in there. He hesitated. Clara understood immediately. People would talk. Nathan Cole spending the night inside Clara Bell's house would give Cedar Ridge enough gossip for a month. She almost changed her mind. Then she remembered the road, the laughter, the people waiting for her to fail. Kitchen chair, she said. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What? You can sleep in the kitchen chair if the idea of a roof that doesn't collapse makes you uncomfortable. I've slept sitting up before. I believe that. Nathan entered. Clara closed the door behind him. The house suddenly felt different with another person inside. Smaller, warmer. She set a basin of water on the table. Nathan sat while Clara cleaned the cut near his eyebrow. He remained perfectly still. Her fingers brushed his temple. She became suddenly aware of how close they were. Nathan's eyes were gray. Not blue as she had assumed. Gray like rain clouds. Clara stepped back. There. Nathan looked at the bandage. You've done this before. Cattle kick. People? Only when necessary. That earned the smallest smile yet. Clara sat across from him and unwrapped her palm. Nathan reached toward the cloth. May I? She hesitated, then offered her hand. His fingers were rough from work. He cleaned the cut carefully. No man had touched Clara's hand in years without either shaking it after a business agreement or trying to lead her somewhere she had not asked to go. Nathan held it as though it were simply something injured that deserved care. Nothing more. Somehow that felt more intimate. You'll need to keep it wrapped tomorrow, he said. You're assuming I'm working tomorrow. You are. Then why tell me? So you'll wrap it. Clara smiled despite herself. Outside, water dripped steadily from the roof. Nathan tied the cloth, then released her hand. Get some sleep. You're giving orders in my house now? $1. Clara laughed softly. She walked toward the stairs. At the bottom step, she stopped. Nathan? He looked up. Thank you. His expression changed slightly. He seemed almost uncomfortable with gratitude. You worked as hard as I did. That isn't what I thanked you for. Nathan understood. Neither said more. Clara went upstairs. Long after she lay beneath the quilt, sleep refused to come. She kept hearing Earl Dawson's voice. Nobody wants a woman who acts like she doesn't need a husband. Then Nathan's. I'll stay and help. For years, Clara had believed those were opposite things. Either she was strong enough to stand alone, or she needed someone. Tonight had shown her something she had never considered. Perhaps accepting a hand did not make hers weaker. Downstairs, Nathan Cole sat awake beside the dying lamp. In his coat pocket was a folded newspaper clipping he had carried for nearly 3 years. The headline mentioned a burned ranch outside Cheyenne. Below it was his name, and Nathan knew that if Clara Bell ever learned why he had truly left Wyoming, Cedar Ridge's gossip about him would seem almost kind. By 7 the next morning, Cedar Ridge already knew Nathan Cole had spent the night at Bell Ranch. Clara learned this when Mrs. Whitmore arrived carrying a basket of biscuits she had absolutely no reason to deliver. The older woman stood on Clara's porch, peering past her shoulder toward the kitchen. He still here? Clara folded her arms. Good morning to you too. Mrs. Whitmore lowered her voice. People are talking. People were talking yesterday. Yes, but yesterday they were talking about your barn. Today they're talking about Nathan Cole. Clara glanced toward the yard. Nathan was already outside. He had been awake before sunrise, repairing the damaged roof as though sleeping 4 hours in a kitchen chair were perfectly ordinary. What are they saying? Mrs. Whitmore's expression changed. That you should be careful. Because he repaired my barn? Because nobody knows where he came from. Clara took the basket. Thank you for the biscuits. Clara. She stopped. Mrs. Whitmore stepped closer. 3 years ago, there was a ranch fire outside Cheyenne. Family lost almost everything. Some say Cole worked there. Clara's attention sharpened. Some say? Earl found an old newspaper at the stage office. Of course Earl had. What exactly did it say? I haven't seen it. Then you don't know. Mrs. Whitmore sighed. I know you've spent years proving you don't need anyone telling you what to do. That sounds accurate. But sometimes caution isn't the same thing as control. That struck harder than Clara expected. She softened. I'll be careful. Mrs. Whitmore nodded. Then she glanced toward Nathan again. For what it's worth, he worked harder last night than every man standing on that road combined. Clara smiled faintly. For what it's worth, I noticed. After Mrs. Whitmore left, Clara carried the biscuits outside. Nathan was standing on a ladder, replacing a split board. Breakfast. Later. Now. Nathan looked down. $1? Clara lifted the basket. Breakfast is not part of your contractual authority. He climbed down anyway. They sat beneath the cottonwood near the barn. For several minutes, they ate in silence. Clara watched him. Nathan noticed. You're staring. I'm thinking. Dangerous. Apparently. He looked at her. She decided not to circle the question. Were you working near Cheyenne 3 years ago? Nathan stopped chewing. There it was. That same closed expression from the night before. Yes. On a ranch that burned? Yes. Clara waited. Nathan placed the biscuit back in the basket. Who told you? Does it matter? Yes. Mrs. Whitmore heard it from someone who probably heard it from Earl Dawson. Nathan stood. I should go. Clara stared at him. What? You don't need this attached to your name. I already have a name attached to my name. Nathan looked toward the road. That's different. Why? Because this one could be true. Clara rose slowly. Did you burn that ranch? Nathan's jaw tightened. No. Did you kill someone? No. Did you steal from them? No. Then sit down. He looked at her as if she had spoken in another language. Clara pointed at the grass. I asked questions. You answered them. You believe me? I don't know you well enough to believe everything you say. Something dark flickered across his face. Clara continued. But I know Earl Dawson well enough not to believe everything he says. Nathan almost smiled. Almost. Then hoofbeats came from the road. 4 riders approached. Earl rode in front. Clara sighed. Speak of the devil. Nathan's expression hardened. Earl stopped outside the gate. I came to help. Clara looked at the 3 men behind him. Yesterday, every one of them had refused her offer of work. Today they carried hammers. How generous. Earl dismounted. Thought you might reconsider doing this properly. Clara gestured toward the barn. It's still standing. Barely. So am I. Nobody's offered to replace me yet. The ranch hands laughed nervously. Earl ignored them. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. Nathan went still. Clara saw it immediately. So Earl saw it too. His smile widened. You know what this is, Cole? Nathan said nothing. Earl held the paper toward Clara. Cheyenne Gazette. 3 years old. Clara didn't take it. Congratulations on learning to read. Earl's smile vanished. This man was blamed for a fire that killed almost 200 head of cattle. Clara looked at Nathan. Nathan's eyes remained on Earl. Earl continued. Ranch belonged to a man named Joseph Mercer. Cole was foreman. Nathan's voice was quiet. I wasn't foreman. Oh? Second hand. Close enough. No, it isn't. Earl unfolded the paper. Says witnesses saw you arguing with Mercer the night before the fire. Nathan's hands curled into fists. Clara stepped between them. Enough. Earl stared at her. You're defending him? I'm stopping you from turning my yard into a courtroom. You should know who's sleeping under your roof. Nathan looked at Clara. The shame in his expression told her more than the article did. Earl extended the clipping again. This time Clara took it. She read. The article was short. A ranch fire. Livestock lost. A worker named Nathan Cole questioned. A dispute over wages. Suspicion of deliberate sabotage. No charges filed. No conviction. Nothing proven. Clara folded it. That's it? Earl blinked. That's enough. For you. You're going to keep him here? Clara handed the article back. Unless you can show me where it says he was convicted of anything. Earl's face reddened. You always did have poor judgment where men are concerned. The words landed exactly where he intended. Henry Callahan. The abandoned courtship. 5 years of ridicule. Clara felt the old humiliation rise. Nathan stepped forward. Leave. Earl smiled. Or what? Nathan's voice never changed. You'll find out. Clara turned sharply. Nathan. He stopped. She looked at Earl. This is my ranch. Then at Nathan. And I decide who leaves. Nathan's eyes met hers. For a second, Clara thought he might resent the correction. Instead, he stepped back. Clara pointed toward the road. Earl, you leave. The ranch hands shifted. Earl stared at her. You'll regret this. Maybe. You don't know what he is. Clara's expression hardened. No, but I know exactly what you are. Earl mounted. The others followed. Before riding away, he looked back. When this goes wrong, don't expect Cedar Ridge to save you. Clara watched until they disappeared. Then she turned toward Nathan. "You're angry." "No. You look angry." "I always look like this." "That must be exhausting." Nathan's mouth twitched. Clara folded her arms. But Earl was right about one thing. The almost smile disappeared. "I don't know what happened in Cheyenne." Nathan looked toward the barn. "I told you I didn't burn it." "You did. And you believed me." "I believed that answer." Nathan looked back at her. Clara continued. "I didn't say I wouldn't eventually want the rest." Silence stretched between them. Nathan finally sat beneath the cottonwood again. Clara joined him. His voice was lower when he spoke. Joseph Mercer was a hard man. Paid late. Cut wages whenever he wanted. One winter, 3 families working his ranch didn't have enough money for food. Clara listened. "I argued with him. Told him I'd take the men and leave if he didn't pay them." The article mentioned that. The fire started the next night. Nathan stared at his hands. Dry hay in the south barn. Wind carried it through everything. "Did anyone die?" "No," Clara exhaled. Nathan continued. "But Mercer needed someone to blame. I was the last man who threatened him." "And you left?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because nobody cared whether I'd done it." That answer stopped her. Nathan looked toward Cedar Ridge in the distance. They wanted someone simple to hate. Clara understood that better than he knew. "They found you." "Yes." Clara stared at the damaged barn. "And Cedar Ridge found me." Nathan looked at her. For the first time, neither needed to explain. Different accusations. Different wounds. Same loneliness. Clara reached for the basket. "Then I suppose we should disappoint them both." Nathan frowned. "How?" She handed him another biscuit. "By finishing the barn." This time Nathan smiled. It was small, but unmistakable, and Clara realized she liked the sight of it far more than she should. By the end of the week, the Bell barn no longer looked like something waiting to die. Nathan replaced the worst section of roof, straightened the eastern wall, and reinforced the ridge beam with cedar thick enough to outlast both of them. Clara worked beside him every day. She carried lumber, measured boards, cooked meals, argued with him about nails, and slowly discovered that Nathan Cole possessed a dry sense of humor he seemed determined to hide from the rest of Cedar Ridge. "You cut that board short," Clara said Thursday afternoon. Nathan examined it. "No. It's half an inch short. The wall's half an inch crooked." "My wall is not crooked." Nathan looked at the barn, then at Clara. "The barn disagrees." She threw a handful of sawdust at him. Nathan actually laughed. Not the restrained, almost smile she had seen before. A real laugh. Clara froze. Nathan noticed. "What?" "Nothing. You're staring again. I didn't know you could make that sound." His smile disappeared immediately. Clara regretted saying it. Then Nathan picked up another board. "I charge extra for laughing." $1? 2. Highway robbery. Inflation. Clara laughed and returned to work. Something had changed between them. Nothing either could name. Nathan still slept in the kitchen chair. Clara still paid him at the end of each day. They had made no promises. Yet every morning, she found herself listening for his boots on the porch. Every evening, when they sat across from each other eating supper, the house felt less empty than it had since her father died. That frightened her more than the collapsing barn ever had. A barn could be rebuilt. Loneliness, once disturbed, was harder to put back where it belonged. On Friday afternoon, a wagon arrived, carrying Mary Whitmore and her 17-year-old daughter, Rose. Rose jumped down before the wheels stopped turning. "Clara!" Clara climbed from the barn roof. "What happened?" "Nothing happened." Rose grinned. "That's why I came." Mary stepped down more carefully. "There's a harvest dance tomorrow night." Clara groaned. "No." Rose blinked. "I haven't asked anything yet." "Yes, you have." "You're coming." "No." Mary smiled. "You should." "I would rather repair the other half of the roof." Rose looked toward Nathan, who was planing a board near the barn doors. "Maybe Mr. Cole wants to go." Nathan did not look up. "No." Clara pointed at him. See? A sensible man. Rose lowered her voice dramatically. Everyone in town will be there. That is precisely the problem. Clara. No. Clara. Rose. The girl crossed her arms. You haven't gone to a dance since Henry Callahan. The yard went quiet. Mary closed her eyes. Rose. Rose's face fell. I'm sorry. Clara stared at the hammer in her hand. 5 years. 5 years since she had worn her mother's blue dress and waited in the church hall while Henry danced twice with Evelyn Dawson, the banker's daughter. 3 weeks later, he announced their engagement. Clara had never attended another town dance. It's fine, she said. Rose clearly knew it wasn't. Clara forced a smile. Maybe next year. Mary nodded and guided Rose toward the wagon. Before climbing aboard, Rose glanced at Nathan. Then at Clara. A mischievous idea clearly entered her mind. Mary caught it. Don't. I didn't say anything. You were about to. They drove away. Clara resumed hammering. Nathan continued planing the board. Neither spoke for almost a minute. Then he said, You should go. Clara stopped. To the dance? Yes. You just said you weren't going. I'm not. Then why should I? Nathan shrugged. Because you want to. I absolutely do not. You looked at the wagon until it disappeared. Clara stared at him. You noticed too much. Occupational hazard. What occupation? Nathan placed the plane aside. Being quiet. Clara rolled her eyes. I don't dance. Everybody dances. You? No. There goes your argument. Nathan studied her for a moment. Henry Callahan the reason? Clara stiffened. You remembered his name. You said it once. That was several days ago. I remember things. Apparently. Clara descended the ladder. I don't care about Henry anymore. I didn't say you did. The entire town thinks I stayed away because he broke my heart. Nathan waited. Clara hated that his silence always made her continue. He embarrassed me. She brushed sawdust from her skirt. There's a difference. Nathan nodded. I know. Clara looked at him. Of course he did. Cheyenne. The fire. People deciding who he was before asking what happened. They watched me, she said, for months afterward. Every time Henry and Evelyn walked past me, everyone waited to see my face. Nathan's expression hardened. So I stopped giving them a face to watch. And gave them your absence instead. Clara looked away. That landed too close. Nathan returned to his board. Go tomorrow. Why? Because staying away is still letting them decide. Clara stared at him. You're annoyingly wise for a man who lives out of a saddlebag. Don't spread it around. The next evening, Clara stood in front of her bedroom mirror wearing her mother's blue dress. It had been folded inside a cedar chest for 5 years. The sleeves were slightly out of fashion. The waist needed loosening, but it still fit, mostly. Clara almost changed her mind 3 times. Then she remembered Nathan's words. Staying away is still letting them decide. She pinned her hair higher than usual and descended the stairs. Nathan stood near the kitchen door. He had shaved. Clara stopped. Nathan looked equally surprised. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Clara said, You shaved. Apparently. That scar is more noticeable now. A pale line crossed his jaw, disappearing beneath his ear. Nathan touched it. You're supposed to compliment people before dances. I'm out of practice. His eyes moved over the blue dress. You look... Clara waited. Nathan seemed to search for a word. Different. She stared. That's your compliment? I'm also out of practice. Despite herself, Clara laughed. Nathan reached for his hat. You ready? She blinked. Ready for what? The dance. You said you weren't going. I changed my mind. Clara's heart performed an unreasonable little movement inside her chest. Why? Nathan opened the door. Someone told me everybody dances. You said that. Sounded convincing. Clara followed him outside. They rode into Cedar Ridge beneath a sky full of stars. The church hall was already crowded when they arrived. Music spilled through the doors, fiddles, boots striking floorboards, laughter. Clara nearly turned around. Then Nathan dismounted beside her. He offered his hand, not because she could not climb down herself. She knew that now. He knew it too. He simply offered. Clara placed her hand in his. Inside, conversation changed almost immediately. Not stopped. Changed. Whispers moved across the hall. Clara felt every eye. Nathan leaned closer. Still want to leave? Yes. Good. She looked at him. Good? Means we should stay. Clara smiled. They entered. Earl Dawson stood near the refreshment table. His expression soured the moment he saw them. Across the room stood Henry Callahan. Older now. Heavier. Beside him was Evelyn, his wife. Henry's eyes widened when he saw Clara. For 5 years, Clara had imagined this moment. She had imagined anger, vindication, pain. Instead, she felt almost nothing. Then the musicians began another dance. Couples moved toward the center of the room. Nathan stood beside her, with both hands in his coat pockets. Clara looked at him. You really don't dance? No. Not even badly? Especially not badly. Coward. Nathan turned. Clara held out her hand. His eyes dropped to it. Around them, people had begun noticing. Clara suddenly understood what she was doing. For years, Cedar Ridge had waited for a man to choose her. They had made her worth into a question only a man could answer. But this time, Clara was asking, choosing. Nathan looked at her face. You sure? No? That makes 2 of us. He took her hand. They stepped onto the floor. Nathan was terrible. Truly terrible. He missed the first turn. Stepped on Clara's shoe during the second. Nearly collided with the blacksmith on the third. Clara laughed so hard she forgot anyone was watching. You lied. About what? Everybody dances. I said everybody dances. I never said everybody should. Nathan guided her through another clumsy turn. This time he got it right. Clara looked up. His hand rested carefully at her waist. Her fingers lay against his shoulder. For a moment, the noise around them faded. Nathan's gray eyes held hers. And Clara realized something terrifying. She was no longer afraid Cedar Ridge would think she wanted him. She was afraid Nathan might not know that she did. The music ended. Applause filled the room. Nathan did not release her immediately. Neither did Clara. Then Earl Dawson's voice came from behind them. Careful, Clara. The spell broke. They turned. Earl held a glass of whiskey. You've already had one man decide you weren't worth marrying. The hall went quiet. Evelyn Callahan whispered something to her husband. Henry looked down. Earl smiled cruelly. Wouldn't want the whole town watching it happen twice. Clara felt the old wound tear open. Before Nathan could move, she squeezed his hand. A warning. This was hers. Clara faced Earl. 5 years ago, she would have left. 2 years ago, she might have struck him. Tonight, she simply smiled. You misunderstand something, Earl. He raised an eyebrow. Clara looked around the room. At Henry. At Evelyn. At the people who had whispered about her. Then back at Earl. I didn't come here hoping a man would choose me. She tightened her fingers around Nathan's hand. I already chose who I wanted to dance with. Silence. Then Mary Whitmore began clapping. Rose joined her. The blacksmith followed. Within seconds, applause spread through the hall. Earl's face darkened. Nathan looked at Clara, as if he had forgotten how to speak. She leaned closer. Speechless again, Cole? His eyes softened. Seems to happen around you. The musicians began another song. Nathan offered his hand this time. Clara took it. And while Cedar Ridge watched, the woman they had called unwanted stepped back onto the dance floor with the only man whose opinion had somehow begun to matter. The morning after the dance, Cedar Ridge had a new subject. Not Clara's barn, not Nathan's past, not even Henry Callahan. Clara Bell had chosen Nathan Cole. That was how the story spread. By breakfast, Mary Whitmore had apparently told Rose, Rose had told the blacksmith's daughter, and someone at Dawson Mercantile had transformed one dance into an engagement before noon. Clara learned this when she entered the store for lamp oil. Mr. Dawson looked over his spectacles. "Congratulations." Clara stopped. "For what?" He cleared his throat. "Nothing. Mr. Dawson." He suddenly became fascinated by a ledger. Clara sighed. Behind her, two women whispered. One said Nathan Cole had proposed beneath the cottonwoods. The other insisted Clara had proposed to him. Clara bought the oil and left. Outside, she found Nathan leaning against the hitching rail. "You knew." He looked innocent. "About what?" "The entire town marrying us before breakfast." Nathan considered this. Could be worse. How? They could be planning the children. Clara stared at him. Nathan's mouth twitched. "You made a joke." "Don't tell anyone." She tried not to smile. Failed. For a few seconds, the whispers around them did not matter. Then Earl Dawson stepped from the bank. Clara's smile vanished. Earl walked toward them carrying a leather folder. "You've got a minute?" "No. It concerns Bell Ranch." That stopped her. Nathan straightened. Earl looked at him. "Private business." Clara answered first. "He stays." Earl's jaw tightened. "Fine." He handed her the folder. Inside was a copy of her mortgage agreement. Clara recognized every page. "What is this?" "Your note comes due in April." "I know. My father bought it from First Territorial Bank yesterday." Clara stared at him. "What?" Earl smiled. "Bell Ranch owes Dawson Holdings now." The air seemed to thin. "You can't just buy my mortgage. Banks sell notes every day." "Why?" "You know why." Nathan moved half a step closer. Earl noticed. Clara did too. She kept her eyes on the document. The amount remaining was $1,842. More money than she could raise without a good cattle sale. A cattle sale that depended on surviving winter. A winter that depended on the barn. Earl tapped the final page. "My father is willing to make this easy." Clara looked up. "I'm listening." "Sell now." "No." "Clara." "No." "You haven't heard the offer." "I've heard it before." "Not this one." Earl named a number. Clara's breath caught. It was almost twice what his father had offered the previous spring. Enough to pay every debt. Enough to buy a small house in town. Enough to live comfortably for years if she was careful. Nathan watched her face. Earl smiled. "You'd never have to repair another roof again." Clara closed the folder. "And what would your father do with the ranch?" Earl hesitated. That was all she needed. "What does he know?" "About what?" "This land." "Nothing." "You're lying." Earl's expression changed. Clara stepped closer. "He's offered 3 times. Now he buys my mortgage and doubles the price." She handed the folder back. "Nobody pays that much for a failing ranch unless he believes it isn't failing." Nathan looked toward the northern pasture. Earl's smile disappeared. "Take the money, Clara." "No. Think carefully." "I have." "Pride won't save you in April." "No." She looked him directly in the eye. "But maybe the truth will." Earl took the folder. "You always were stubborn. So people keep telling me." He walked away. Nathan waited until Earl entered the mercantile. Then he said, "He knows something." "Yes." "Question is what?" Clara looked across the street at the bank. Her father had refused to sell Bell Ranch for years. He had never explained why. At the time, Clara assumed sentiment. Now she was no longer sure. "Come on." Nathan frowned. "Where?" "Home." "For what?" "My father's records." They spent the afternoon inside Thomas Bell's study. The room had remained mostly untouched since his death. A desk, a rifle mounted above the fireplace, stacks of receipts, cattle records, land deeds, old maps. Clara opened drawer after drawer. Nathan sat on the floor sorting papers. "What exactly are we looking for?" "I don't know." "Helpful." "My father kept everything." Nathan held up a receipt. Apparently, he bought 6 pounds of coffee in 1879. Important historical document. Should we frame it? Clara tossed a pencil at him. It bounced off his shoulder. Hours passed. Nothing. By sunset, Clara's confidence began disappearing. Maybe I'm imagining it. Nathan looked up. Dawson doubled the offer. That doesn't prove anything. It proves he wants the land. He could want to expand. Nathan shook his head. Men like Dawson don't double an offer when they think the seller is desperate. Clara leaned back in her father's chair. You know men like Dawson? I know men who want something. There was something in his voice, another piece of his past. Clara did not ask. Not yet. Nathan returned to a stack of maps. Then he stopped. What's this? Clara stood. He held a hand-drawn survey map. It showed Bell Ranch and the neighboring Dawson property. Near the northern boundary, her father had marked a narrow strip of land in red pencil. Beside it were 3 words, Old Rail Line. Clara frowned. There's never been a railroad here. Nathan studied the map. Maybe not yet. He flipped it over. On the back, Thomas Bell had written a date, October 1887, 6 months before his death. Underneath, do not sell the North 40. Calder says the route is coming through. Clara's heart began pounding. Nathan looked at her. Who's Calder? Edwin Calder. My father's old friend. Where is he? Helena. Nathan examined the map again. If this is real, Dawson doesn't want your ranch. Clara pointed toward the red line. He wants this. A rail right-of-way. Clara understood immediately. If a railroad crossed Bell Ranch, the land could become worth several times its current value. Earl's generous offer suddenly looked very different. He knew. Probably. And my father knew too. Nathan nodded. Clara stared at the handwriting. For 18 months, she had believed she was fighting merely to preserve her father's memory. Now she realized Thomas Bell may have left her something far more valuable than sentiment. A future. Nathan folded the map carefully. We need to verify it. How? Find Calder. Clara shook her head. Helena is 4 days away. Then we ride tomorrow. She looked at him. We? Nathan's expression remained calm. Unless you've suddenly learned to sleep while riding. You're not obligated to come. I know. There's still work here. The barn will hold. Nathan. He met her eyes. What? Clara did not know how to ask the question without exposing too much. Why are you still here? The barn was nearly finished. His paid work was almost done. He owed her nothing. Yet every time trouble appeared, Nathan acted as if leaving had never occurred to him. So she asked something safer. What happens to your dollar? Nathan smiled faintly. I'll put it on your account. Clara laughed. Then she looked at the map again. Earl won't like this. No. He may try to stop us. Nathan stood. That would be a mistake. There was no boast in his voice. That made the words more convincing. That evening, Earl Dawson stood inside his father's office with the door locked. Silas Dawson sat behind a mahogany desk. You gave her the offer? Yes. And? She refused. Silas's expression hardened. Because of coal? Partly. Then get rid of him. Earl looked toward the window. Across town, Clara and Nathan rode toward Bell Ranch together. How? Silas opened a desk drawer. Inside lay another newspaper clipping. This one was not the article Clara had seen. It was longer, more detailed. And at the bottom was the name of the man who had eventually confessed to starting the Cheyenne fire. Nathan Cole's younger brother. Silas pushed the clipping across the desk. Everybody has something they're ashamed of. Earl picked it up. His smile returned. Even Quiet Cole? Especially Quiet Cole. Outside, the evening bell rang over Cedar Ridge, and while Clara Bell rode home believing she had finally discovered why the Dawsons wanted her land, she had no idea they had just found the one secret Nathan feared might make her send him away. They left for Helena before sunrise. Clara rode ahead through the first mile, the folded survey map tucked inside her coat. Nathan followed without speaking. The morning was cold enough to turn their breath white. For nearly an hour, neither mentioned the Dawsons. Then Nathan said, You should sell. Clara turned in the saddle. What? If Calder confirms the railroad route, Dawson will make this ugly. He already has. He'll make it worse. Clara slowed her mare. That sounds suspiciously like concern. It is. That must be painful for you. Nathan ignored the joke. I mean it. So do I. She stopped completely. Nathan pulled his horse beside hers. Clara looked toward the mountains. My father spent 30 years building Bell Ranch. I spent 18 months proving I could keep it. She faced him. I'm not going to hand it over, because Earl Dawson learned how to threaten people politely. Nathan's jaw tightened. This isn't about pride. No. It's about knowing when to leave before something gets destroyed. There was something underneath the words. Clara heard it. Nathan. He looked away. What happened in Wyoming? His shoulders stiffened. We talked about this. We talked about the fire. Same thing. No. Clara studied him. The fire is what happened to the ranch. She paused. You're what happened afterward. Nathan said nothing. Clara urged her horse forward. For another mile, she let him keep his silence. Then hoofbeats sounded behind them. 3 riders. Nathan turned first. Keep going. Clara recognized Earl Dawson immediately. He rode in the center. 2 ranch hands flanked him. Clara stopped. I'm not running. Clara. They're not going to shoot us in the middle of the road. Nathan's expression said he did not share her confidence. Earl approached with an easy smile. Morning. Clara did not answer. Earl looked toward the road ahead. Helena? None of your concern. Calder still living there? That confirmed everything. Clara felt a flash of satisfaction. You do know about the railroad. Earl's smile faded. I know your father believed a lot of things. Enough to make your father buy my mortgage. Earl dismounted. Nathan did the same. The ranch hands remained mounted. Earl held up his hands. Relax, Cole. I didn't come to fight. Then say what you came to say. Earl reached inside his coat. Nathan's hand moved instinctively toward his belt. Clara noticed. So did Earl. He laughed. Still nervous when people reach for something? He withdrew a folded newspaper. Nathan's face changed. Clara saw the fear before he could hide it. Not anger. Fear. Earl held the paper toward her. You might want to read this before you travel 4 days with him. Clara did not take it. Nathan's voice was quiet. Don't. Earl looked pleased. That sounded almost like begging. Clara looked at Nathan. He stared at the newspaper. She had never seen him look defeated before. Not in the storm. Not when the barn roof collapsed. Not even when Earl showed the first article. Whatever was written on that paper mattered. Clara took it. Nathan closed his eyes. The headline described the Cheyenne fire. She read quickly, then slower. A suspect had eventually confessed. Samuel Cole, Nathan's younger brother, 19 years old. The article stated Samuel had started the fire after Joseph Mercer threatened to dismiss several ranch workers. He claimed he meant only to frighten Mercer. Wind spread the flames. Samuel was arrested. Nathan Cole had left Wyoming days before the confession became public. Clara lowered the paper. Earl watched her carefully. So. Clara looked at Nathan. Your brother started it. Nathan nodded. You knew. Yes. Before the fire? No. After? Yes. Earl stepped closer. He knew when everyone suspected him. Nathan's voice hardened. I found out 2 days later. And did nothing. Nathan looked at Clara. That was the part he had feared. I tried to get Samuel to confess. He refused? Nathan nodded. He was 19, terrified. So you left? No. Nathan swallowed. I told Mercer I did it. Clara stared at him. Even Earl looked momentarily surprised. Nathan continued. I thought if Mercer believed he had his man, Samuel could disappear before the sheriff came. Why? He was my brother. The answer was simple. Too simple for the weight behind it. What happened? Samuel heard what I'd done. Nathan's eyes dropped. He confessed before they arrested me. Clara looked at the article again. And you left anyway. Nathan nodded. Why? Nathan's voice became rougher. Because Samuel went to prison. He started the fire. He was 19, so you blamed yourself. I was his older brother. That isn't the same thing. It was to me. Earl gave a short laugh. Touching. Clara turned on him. Why are you here? To make sure you understand what kind of man you're trusting. Clara folded the article. A man who tried to go to prison for his brother? A liar. Nathan flinched. Earl saw it. He lied to Mercer. Lied to the sheriff. Lied to you. Clara looked at Nathan. He didn't tell me everything. Same difference. No. Earl frowned. Clara handed him the paper. It isn't. She mounted her horse. Earl stared. You're still going with him? Clara adjusted the reins. Yes. You don't care that he hid this? I care. Nathan looked up. Clara met his eyes. We'll discuss that later. Then she looked at Earl. But you dragged yourself halfway across Montana to use another family's worst day as a weapon. Her voice sharpened. That tells me far more about you than it does about him. Earl's expression went cold. You're making a mistake. Maybe. Clara smiled. But I've discovered I prefer making my own. She rode forward. Nathan remained beside the road. Clara looked back. You coming, Cole? For several seconds, he did not move. Then he mounted. They rode away. Neither spoke until Earl and the others disappeared behind a ridge. Nathan finally said, You should have let me go. Clara kept her eyes ahead. Do you want to go? That isn't what I said. No. She slowed. It never is. Nathan looked at her. Clara's anger finally surfaced. You lied by omission. I know. You let me defend you without knowing the whole truth. I know. I don't like that. I know. Stop saying you know. Nathan almost smiled, but thought better of it. Clara exhaled. Then quieter. But Earl wanted me to hear that story and see a dangerous man. Nathan said nothing. I heard it and saw a fool who tried to destroy his own life for his little brother. Nathan's eyes hardened. Samuel was all I had. Clara looked at him. And where is he now? Wyoming Territorial Prison. How long? 7 years. How much left? 2. Clara absorbed that. Nathan stared toward the road. I spent 3 years moving from town to town because everywhere I stayed, eventually somebody found the story. And then? They looked at me differently. So you left before they could ask you to? Yes. Clara's chest tightened. There it was. The thing they shared. She had stayed in Cedar Ridge and learned to endure rejection. Nathan had learned to leave before it arrived. Maybe that's why you're still at Bell Ranch, she said. Nathan frowned. What? You recognized me. I didn't know you. Not me. Clara glanced back toward Cedar Ridge. What it feels like when a whole town decides who you are. Nathan was silent for a long time. Then he said, yes. One word. But Clara heard everything inside it. They rode on. By late afternoon, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Nathan stopped. Clara followed his gaze. Bell Ranch lay far behind them, invisible beyond miles of prairie. You regret coming? She asked. Nathan looked at her. No. Even now? Especially now. Clara's breath caught. Nathan seemed to realize how the words sounded. He looked away. Because Dawson confirmed the railroad. Of course. That's what I meant. Obviously. They started riding again. Neither believed him. That night, they camped beside a narrow creek. Clara sat near the fire, wrapped in a wool blanket. Nathan lay several feet away, hat over his eyes. She assumed he was asleep. Nathan? No. Clara smiled. You answer remarkably quickly for a sleeping man. I've had practice. She watched sparks rise into the darkness. Why did you help me that first night? Nathan removed the hat from his face. I told you. Because they were waiting for me to fail. Yes. That's not all. Nathan sat up. The fire lit one side of his face. Clara waited. Finally he said, I'd seen you before. Where? Town. When? Lots of times. Clara frowned. You never spoke to me. No. Then why notice me? Nathan stared into the fire. You always walked like you had somewhere to be. Clara laughed softly. That's your explanation? You never looked around to see who was watching. His voice lowered. I liked that. Clara stopped smiling. Nathan met her eyes. And when I saw everyone standing outside your fence waiting for the barn to fall. He paused. I didn't want them to be right. Clara felt warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. So you stayed. Yes. She looked down. For the barn. Nathan's gaze remained on her. At first, Clara slowly looked back up. Neither moved. The fire cracked between them. Then somewhere beyond the trees, a horse whinnied. The moment broke. Nathan stood. I'll check them. Clara watched him walk into the darkness. At first, those two words followed her long after she lay down. And for the first time, Clara Bell began to wonder whether the quiet cowboy had stopped staying because she needed help, and started staying because leaving had become harder than either of them wanted to admit. Helena appeared beneath a pale afternoon sky 2 days later. Compared with Cedar Ridge, the territorial capital felt almost impossibly busy. Freight wagons crowded the streets. Men in dark suits moved between government offices. Hotel balconies overlooked shops Clara could not have imagined existing in one place. Nathan rode beside her through the traffic. You know where Calder lives? Used to. That sounds promising. He and father exchanged letters. I haven't seen him since I was 16. Even more promising. Clara glanced at him. You're becoming sarcastic. Bad company. She smiled. They found Edwin Calder's name at a small surveying office near the edge of town. The building smelled of ink, tobacco, and rolled maps. An elderly clerk looked up when Clara entered. Mr. Calder? The man's expression softened. You family? Clara Bell, Thomas Bell's daughter. The clerk removed his spectacles. Oh. Something in that single sound tightened her stomach. He's still here? The man pointed toward a staircase. Second floor. Back room. Clara climbed quickly. Nathan followed. The room upstairs was narrow and crowded with maps. A white-haired man sat near the window with a blanket over his knees. He looked older than Clara remembered. Much older. But when he saw her, his eyes sharpened. Thomas? Clara stopped. No. The man blinked. Then recognition came. Clara. She crossed the room. Mr. Calder. He reached for her hand. Your father wrote that you'd kept the ranch. I'm trying. Calder smiled faintly. He knew you would. Those words nearly undid her. Clara sat across from him. Nathan remained near the door. She removed her father's survey map and placed it on the table. Calder's expression changed immediately. Where did you find this? His study. Calder touched the red line. Then he never told you. No? Probably thought he had more time. Clara swallowed. What is it? Calder looked toward Nathan. Who's he? Nathan Cole. That doesn't answer the question. Clara looked at Nathan. For the first time, she realized she did not know what to call him. Employee sounded absurd now. Friend felt too small. Nathan saved her. I'm helping with the ranch. Calder's eyes moved between them. A knowing smile appeared. Of course you are. Clara cleared her throat. The map? Calder leaned back. 2 years ago, Northern Prairie Railway began surveying routes west from Helena. 3 possible lines. He pointed at the paper. One crossed the Bell property. Clara's pulse quickened. Was it selected? Not officially. Nathan stepped closer. But unofficially? Calder looked at him. You ask better questions. Clara frowned. I traveled 4 days for this conversation. Calder laughed softly. You're Thomas's daughter, all right. He opened a drawer and removed a roll of blue paper. When he spread it across the desk, Clara saw a much larger version of the route. The line passed directly through the northern 40 acres of Bell Ranch, then continued toward Cedar Ridge. Nathan studied the markings. Station here? His finger rested less than a mile from Clara's property. Calder nodded. If approved. Clara stared. A rail station that close would transform the ranch. Cattle could be shipped directly east. Land prices would rise. Businesses would follow. Her father had not merely been protecting pasture, he had been protecting the most valuable transportation corridor in the valley. Does Dawson know? Calder's face hardened. Silas Dawson came here 11 months ago. Clara felt cold. Before father died? About 5 months before. What did you tell him? Nothing. Calder tapped the map. But Dawson had already spoken to someone inside the railway company. Nathan exhaled. So he knew enough. Yes. Clara stood and walked toward the window. 11 months. Silas Dawson had known before her father died. Then Thomas Bell died. The purchase offers began almost immediately afterward. The mortgage, the pressure, the laughter. All of it suddenly looked different. Why didn't father tell me? Calder answered gently. He was trying to confirm the route. He should have told me. He probably intended to. That doesn't help now. No. Clara closed her eyes. Anger and grief mixed in a way she could not separate. Nathan came beside her, but did not touch her. That was one of the things she had begun to appreciate about him. He never assumed comfort gave him the right to enter her space. Clara looked back at Calder. What do I need to prove the land's value? Calder opened another drawer. Nothing. She frowned. He removed an envelope sealed with red wax. Your father already did. Clara stared at it. Thomas asked me to keep this until either the railway announced the route or you came looking. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a copy of a preliminary right-of-way agreement. Northern Prairie Railway, Thomas Bell, 40 acres. An option giving the company temporary rights to purchase a narrow corridor if the route were approved. At the bottom was a proposed payment. Clara read the number twice. $9,000. More than enough to clear the mortgage several times over. He signed this? Preliminary agreement only, Calder said. It expires in 6 months unless the company renews it. Nathan looked at Clara. April. The same month her mortgage came due. Silas Dawson was not merely trying to buy the property before the railroad arrived. He was racing the railroad. Clara folded the agreement. Can Dawson foreclose before April? If you violate the mortgage terms. I haven't. Calder hesitated. Nathan caught it. What? There is one issue. Clara's stomach tightened again. Calder pointed to a clause in the original survey. The northern boundary. What about it? Bell and Dawson land overlap by approximately 12 acres on older county maps. Clara frowned. My father settled that years ago. He believed he did. Believed? Thomas filed a corrected survey. Calder paused. It disappeared from the county record. Nathan's face hardened. Clara stared. Documents don't disappear. Not by themselves. Silence. Clara understood. Silas Dawson. If the corrected survey was missing, Dawson could challenge ownership of the exact land the railroad needed. What proves the boundary? Calder looked at the map Clara had brought. Your father's copy. This? No. He pointed to a note in the corner. Marker 7B, North Creek, Cedar Post. There should be a brass survey plate fixed to the original boundary marker. Nathan leaned closer. If it's still there. Calder nodded. If Dawson hasn't removed it. Clara thought of the northern pasture, the old creek, the section of fence she rarely visited. We go back tonight. Nathan shook his head. Horses need rest. We leave at dawn. Agreed. Calder looked between them. You'll need more than a marker if Dawson contests this. What else? A witness. You? The old man smiled sadly. I won't survive the ride to Cedar Ridge. Clara's expression softened. Calder lifted a hand. Don't pity me. I've had 78 years. Most were good. He reached for another sheet. But there is someone else. He wrote a name. Benjamin Hale, railroad surveyor. He helped your father place the corrected marker. He lives outside Cedar Ridge now. Clara knew the name. Hale? The old man near Willow Creek? The same. Nathan folded the paper. Then we find him. Calder leaned back. And Clara? She stopped. Your father worried about you. Her throat tightened. I know. No. Calder shook his head. Not because he thought you couldn't run Bell Ranch. He looked at the map. He worried, because he knew you would try to carry every piece of it alone. Clara said nothing. He told me once that you inherited his worst habit. What? Believing strength means never letting anyone share the weight. Her eyes moved involuntarily toward Nathan. Calder noticed. Again that faint smile. Perhaps you're finally improving. Mr. Calder. I'm old. I'm allowed to be rude. Nathan looked away, clearly hiding a smile. Clara folded the documents into her coat. We should go. At the door, Calder called after Nathan. Cole. Nathan stopped. Calder studied him. Thomas Bell judged men by whether they stayed when work became unpleasant. Nathan's expression changed. Calder nodded toward Clara. Looks like you're still here. Nathan glanced at her. Yes, sir. Outside, Clara said nothing until they reached the horses. Then, what was that? Nathan tightened the saddle strap. What? That conversation with Calder. Old man talking. He likes you. Poor judgment. Clara stepped closer. Nathan. He looked at her. You're still here. The teasing disappeared from his face. Yes. The barn is finished. Yes. You're not getting paid anymore. I noticed. Then why? Nathan rested one hand on the saddle. Clara waited. He could have joked, could have changed the subject, could have retreated behind silence. This time he didn't. Because I don't want to leave. The street noise seemed to disappear. Clara's heartbeat became embarrassingly loud. Nathan continued. I've spent 3 years leaving before anyone could ask me to. He looked directly at her. You haven't asked. Clara swallowed. Would you? Would I what? Leave. Nathan's face softened. If you wanted me to. And if I didn't? A long silence. Then Nathan stepped closer. Then I'd stay. Clara had imagined being chosen before. Years ago she had imagined a ring, a church, a man asking permission from her father. None of those fantasies had ever felt as intimate as two people standing beside tired horses on a crowded Helena street, while Nathan Cole quietly told her he would remain if she wanted him. Clara looked at his mouth. Nathan noticed. He lifted one hand slowly toward her face, then stopped, giving her the choice. Clara closed the distance. Their first kiss was brief. Careful, almost uncertain. Nathan pulled back first. His forehead rested lightly against hers. Clara whispered, You're terrible at dancing. Nathan smiled, apparently better at this. She kissed him again, longer this time. And 4 days away in Cedar Ridge, Earl Dawson stood beside the northern boundary of Bell Ranch, with a shovel in his hands. At his feet was an old cedar survey post. He looked at the brass plate nailed into its side. 7B. Earl glanced toward his father. Silas Dawson gave one command. Take it out. Earl drove the shovel into the earth. And the piece of evidence Clara needed most began to disappear. Clara knew something was wrong before she reached the northern pasture. They had returned to Bell Ranch just after noon, exhausted from the ride from Helena, but carrying something neither had possessed when they left. Proof. Edwin Calder's documents rested inside Clara's coat. Benjamin Hale lived less than 10 miles away, and somewhere near the North Creek stood the original survey marker capable of proving where Bell Ranch ended and Dawson Land began. For the first time in months, Clara believed she might actually win. Then Nathan stopped his horse. Clara. She followed his gaze. The fence along the northern boundary had been disturbed. Not broken, disturbed. 3 rails had been lifted carefully and replaced. Nathan dismounted. Clara followed. He crouched beside the fence. Horse tracks. How many? 4. Maybe 5. When? Nathan touched the damp soil. 2 days. Exactly when they had been in Helena. Clara's stomach tightened. They hurried toward the creek. Her father's map showed marker 7B beside a bend in the water, roughly 20 yards from an old cottonwood. Clara found the cottonwood, found the creek, found the depression where a cedar post should have stood. Nothing else. She stared at the empty ground. No. Nathan knelt. Fresh earth surrounded the hole. Someone had filled it badly. He dug with both hands. Clara grabbed a shovel from the saddle. Minutes later, they had opened a pit nearly 2 feet deep. No marker, no brass plate, nothing. Clara threw the shovel down. Dawson. Nathan stood. Yes. He knew. Yes. He waited until we left. Nathan did not answer. Clara paced along the creek bank. We should have come here before Helena. We didn't know. I should have known. No. My father wrote it on the map. You didn't know what it meant. I should have looked. Nathan stepped in front of her. Clara. She stopped. His voice remained calm. You're doing it again. Doing what? Blaming yourself because someone else chose to cheat. Her anger faltered. Nathan pointed toward the empty hole. Dawson removed that marker. Not you. But without it, we find another way. What way? Hale. Clara looked toward the southern road. If he remembers. He will. And if he doesn't, then we find something else. Clara gave a bitter laugh. You always think there's something else. No. Nathan looked directly at her. I just don't think Dawson gets to decide when we stop. We. Clara noticed it immediately. Not you. Not your ranch. We. She picked up the shovel. All right. Nathan's expression softened. All right? We find Hale. Benjamin Hale lived in a one-room cabin beside Willow Creek. They reached him before sunset. He was 73, half-deaf, and suspicious of anyone arriving unannounced. When Clara mentioned Thomas Bell, however, he opened the door. Tom's girl? Clara. Hale squinted at her. You were smaller. That was 20 years ago. People usually are. Nathan coughed to hide a laugh. Clara gave him a look. Inside, Hale listened while she explained. Railroad. Dawson. The Missing County Survey. Marker 7B. At that, his expression darkened. Missing. Someone dug it up. Hale leaned back. Then Silas finally got desperate. Clara stared. You knew? I knew he hated that marker. Why? Hale looked toward Nathan. Because it proved Tom was right. He stood slowly and crossed to an old wooden trunk. From beneath blankets and surveying instruments, he removed a leather notebook. He opened it to a page dated June 1876. There, in faded ink, was a hand-drawn boundary line, marker coordinates, distances from 3 natural landmarks, and one notation, 7B, brass plate fixed to cedar, witnessed by B. Hale and T. Bell. Clara nearly laughed from relief. This proves it. Hale shook his head. It helps. Helps? Court likes physical markers. Nathan asked. Any duplicate plate? No. Clara's hope sank again. Then Hale turned another page. Though Tom did something smart. Clara leaned forward. What? Hale pointed to a note. Second witness stone placed 14 feet east beneath Cottonwood Root. Nathan smiled. Clara stared at the page. What is a witness stone? Backup marker, Hale said. Buried, in case somebody moved the post. Clara's pulse quickened. Dawson knows? Tom and I were the only 2 there. Nathan stood. We go now. Hale looked outside. Dark in an hour. Clara was already reaching for the door. Then we have an hour. They reached Bell Ranch as the sun touched the mountains. Clara ran to the cottonwood, 14 feet east. Nathan measured using a length of rope. They dug. 6 inches. Nothing. 1 foot. Nothing. Clara's heart began sinking. Then Nathan's shovel struck something hard. A dull metallic scrape. Both froze. Nathan dropped to his knees and brushed soil aside. Beneath the roots lay a flat stone. A small iron pin had been driven through its center. Clara touched it. After days of doubt, ridicule, threats, and secrets, the evidence was beneath her hand. Nathan smiled. Still your land. Clara looked at him. Something inside her broke open. She wrapped her arms around him. Nathan stumbled half a step before holding her. Clara laughed against his shoulder. We found it. You found it. We. Nathan tightened his arms. Yes. We. Then a rifle shot cracked across the pasture. The bullet struck the cottonwood inches above Nathan's head. He pulled Clara to the ground. A second shot hit the dirt nearby. Nathan drew his revolver. Stay down. Clara reached for the rifle strapped to her saddle. Not a chance. Across the creek, 3 riders emerged from the fading light. Earl Dawson was one of them. Nathan's voice became cold. You really do attract terrible company. Clara chambered around. Still want to stay? Nathan glanced at her. Even now, somehow, he smiled. I told you. Another shot shattered bark above them. Nathan raised his revolver. I'm not leaving. The second rifle shot struck the creek bank. Nathan shoved Clara behind the cottonwood. 3 riders, he said. I can count. Good. Means you're not panicking. I'm furious. That works too. Earl Dawson sat astride his horse across the creek, flanked by 2 men Clara recognized from his father's ranch. Neither looked eager to be there. Earl raised his rifle. Walk away from the marker, Clara. She stared at him. You shot at us. Warning shots. Nathan glanced at the splintered bark beside his head. Poor aim for a warning. Earl ignored him. You don't understand what you found. Clara laughed without humor. I understand perfectly. She kept one hand on her rifle. You stole the original marker because you knew the railroad route would make my land worth more than your father could afford. Earl's jaw tightened. You think this is about money? What else would it be? Control. The word surprised her. Earl dismounted. His 2 men stayed mounted. My father has spent 20 years making Cedar Ridge into something. Nathan murmured. By owning half of it. Earl looked at him. You think men like you understand what it takes to build a town? Nathan's voice remained calm. I know what it takes to burn one. The ranch hands shifted uneasily. Earl's face hardened. Clara stepped forward from the tree. No more games. We found the witness stone. Hale has the survey notebook. Calder has the railway agreement. For the first time, real fear crossed Earl's face. You went to Calder? Yes. Nathan saw the answer on Earl's face. So your father knew everything. Earl said nothing. Clara raised her voice. The mortgage, the offers, the missing survey, all of it. Earl's grip tightened on the rifle. Give me the papers. No. Clara. No. He lifted the rifle. Nathan moved instantly. Clara did too. But before anyone fired, hoofbeats thundered from the south. Dozens. Earl turned. Lanterns appeared along the ridge. 1, then 5, then 10. A line of riders descended toward the creek. At the front rode Mary Whitmore. Beside her was the blacksmith, Josiah Trent. Behind them came ranchers, shopkeepers, farmhands, and families from Cedar Ridge. Clara lowered her rifle slowly. What? Mary rode straight through the pasture. You 2 have a remarkable talent for disappearing when something important is happening. Clara blinked. How did you know? Benjamin Hale rode in the back of a wagon behind them, wrapped in 3 blankets. The old surveyor raised one hand. I talk loudly when irritated. Josiah dismounted. Hale came into town saying Dawson removed a federal survey marker. One of Earl's ranch hands immediately looked at him. You told us we were moving an old fence post. Earl's expression changed. Shut up. The man stared. That wasn't what it was? Clara stepped forward. No. She pointed at the open hole beside the creek. It proved the boundary between Bell Ranch and Dawson land. The second ranch hand slowly lowered his rifle. Earl looked between them. Pick those guns back up. Neither moved. Silas Dawson's power had always depended on people believing resistance would cost more than obedience. Tonight, for the first time, that belief began to crack. Nathan holstered his revolver, not because the danger was gone, because Earl suddenly stood alone. Mary dismounted. You shot at Clara? Earl shook his head. Nobody was hit. That wasn't the question. Another rider stepped forward. Henry Callahan. Clara's former almost fiancé. For years, Henry had avoided conflict as naturally as rain avoided desert. Tonight he looked directly at Earl. I heard the shots from the South Road. Earl scoffed. And now you're a hero? Henry flushed. No. He looked at Clara. I've spent enough years being a coward. Clara said nothing. There was no satisfaction in hearing it. Only closure. Henry turned toward Earl. You threatened a woman over her own land. Earl raised his voice. My father holds her mortgage. Josiah answered. A mortgage doesn't give you the right to steal survey markers. Earl looked around. People who had laughed at Clara only days earlier now stared at him with open suspicion. The balance had shifted. He knew it. Clara knew it too. But she did not feel victorious. Not yet. Because Silas Dawson was nowhere in sight. Where's your father? She asked. Earl hesitated. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Clara. Something in his voice made her turn. On the western edge of the pasture, smoke rose against the night sky. Clara's blood went cold. The barn. No. She ran for her horse. Nathan was already mounting. Behind them, Earl shouted, I didn't know. Clara stopped just long enough to look back. What? Earl stared at the smoke. His face had gone pale. I swear to God, I didn't know he was going to do that. Nathan understood first. Silas. Earl lowered his rifle. He said if the marker couldn't be found, the land dispute would hold long enough for foreclosure. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. The papers. Her father's study. The maps. The railway agreement. Everything they had brought from Helena. Nathan looked at her. Ride. They galloped. Behind them, half of Cedar Ridge followed. Flames climbed above the roofline before Clara reached the yard. Not the barn. The house. Her house. For one terrible second she could not move. The place where her mother had died. The kitchen where her father had taught her to balance the ranch books. The stairs she had climbed every night since she was 12. Fire burst from an upstairs window. Clara dismounted before the horse stopped. Nathan caught her. No. The papers are inside. I'll get them. They're in my coat. Nathan froze. Clara touched her chest. Empty. She had left the Helena documents in the desk drawer before riding north. Study, she said. Bottom drawer. Nathan pulled his shirt collar over his mouth. Clara grabbed his arm. Don't. He looked at her. The fire reflected in his gray eyes. If those papers burn. I don't care about the papers. Nathan stopped. Clara's voice broke. I care about you. For once, Nathan Cole had no answer. Then a section of porch roof collapsed. Josiah and several men arrived with buckets. Mary began forming a water line from the pump. People scattered across the yard. The same people who had stood at Clara's fence waiting for her barn to fail now ran toward the flames. Nathan looked at the house, then at Clara. We can save the downstairs. Together they joined the line. Buckets passed from hand to hand. Rose Whitmore, Henry Callahan, the blacksmith, farmers, women from the church, ranch hands. Even Earl Dawson arrived and grabbed a bucket without speaking. Clara stared at him. Earl looked ashamed. My father's gone. Where? I don't know. Find him. Earl nodded. Then he ran. The fire raged for another hour. They lost the upstairs completely, but the downstairs walls held, and sometime near midnight, the last open flame died. Clara stood in the mud, staring at what remained. The roof was gone. Her bedroom was gone. Half her memories had become black timber and ash. Nathan appeared beside her. His face was streaked with soot. Clara could barely speak. The study. Nathan nodded. They entered carefully. Water covered the floor. Smoke filled the room. Her father's desk had burned along one side. The bottom drawer was charred. Clara pulled it open. Inside, the edges of several papers were black. But the railway agreement remained readable. So did Calder's map. Clara sank onto the floor. Nathan crouched beside her. She began laughing, then crying. She hated crying, especially in front of people. Nathan said nothing. He simply sat beside her in the wet, ruined room. After a moment, Clara leaned against him. Outside, Cedar Ridge waited. No whispers, no laughter. No one asking whether Clara Bell was too stubborn, too plain, too independent, or too unwanted. They had finally learned that the woman they had spent years judging was not the one who needed to prove herself. When Clara and Nathan stepped outside, Benjamin Hale raised his notebook. "I'll testify tomorrow." Josiah stepped forward. "So will I." One of Earl's ranch hands nodded. "Me too." Then Henry. Then Mary. Then others. One after another. Clara stared at them. For years, she had wanted Cedar Ridge to stop seeing her as the unwanted woman. Now, standing beside the ruins of her home, she realized she no longer needed them to see her differently. She saw herself differently. Nathan's hand found hers. Clara held it. Not because she needed rescuing. Not because she was afraid to stand alone. Because she no longer believed standing with someone meant surrendering any part of herself. In the distance, church bells began ringing. Sheriff Daniel Price rode into the yard. Behind him were 2 deputies. And between them, with his hands tied behind his back, rode Silas Dawson. For the first time in 20 years, the most powerful man in Cedar Ridge looked small. The sheriff dismounted. "Miss Bell?" Clara stepped forward. "We found him at the rail depot." Silas looked at her. "No apology. No shame. Only fury. You think you've won?" Clara looked at the burned house, then at the barn Nathan had helped save, at the townspeople standing in the yard, and finally at the quiet cowboy beside her. No. She met Silas's eyes. "I think you finally lost." The sheriff led him away. Nathan squeezed Clara's hand. She looked up at him. "What?" "Nothing." "You're staring." "I'm thinking." Clara smiled faintly. "Dangerous." Nathan smiled back. And for the first time, she understood that tomorrow would not be about saving Bell Ranch anymore. Tomorrow would be about deciding what kind of life she wanted to build on it. Spring came late to Bell Ranch. Snow remained in the shadows of the cottonwoods long after the valley turned green, and the northern creek ran high with meltwater. But the ranch survived. So did the barn. So did Clara. The house took longer. For several weeks, Clara slept in the small bunkhouse while neighbors helped rebuild the roof and second floor. Nobody called it charity. Not anymore. Josiah Trent repaired the chimney. Mary Whitmore organized meals. Rose painted the kitchen window frames without being asked. Henry Callahan brought lumber twice and never tried to make the deliveries into an apology. Even Earl Dawson returned once. He stood awkwardly at the gate holding a box of nails. Nathan saw him first. "You lost?" Earl looked at the house. "No." Clara walked over. Earl held out the box. "My father's trial starts next month." She nodded. Silas Dawson had been charged with arson, destruction of property, intimidation, and tampering with survey evidence. The county prosecutor had found more after his arrest. Altered land records. Fraudulent liens. Payments made to officials who suddenly claimed not to remember him. The empire he had built through fear began falling apart faster than Clara's barn ever had. Earl looked toward the northern pasture. "I didn't stop him soon enough." "No." He flinched. Clara did not soften the truth. "But you helped the sheriff find him. Too late." "Yes." He looked at her. "You always were difficult." Clara almost smiled. "I hear that often." Earl placed the nails on the fence post. "I'm leaving Cedar Ridge." "Where?" "California, maybe." Nathan leaned against the gate. "Far enough." Earl ignored him. Then he looked at Clara one last time. "I'm sorry." She believed he meant it. That surprised her. But forgiveness and forgetting were different things. "Good luck, Earl." He mounted and rode away. Nathan watched until he disappeared. "You're kinder than I am." "No." Clara picked up the nails. "I just don't want to carry him anymore." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. He understood. He usually did. 2 weeks later, Northern Prairie Railway officially announced the new route. The station would be built less than a mile north of Bell Ranch. The company honored Thomas Bell's preliminary agreement. $9,000. Clara read the final contract 3 times before signing. The first thing she did was ride into Cedar Ridge and pay the mortgage in full. Mr. Dawson's former office had already been sold to another banker. Clara placed the money on the desk. The banker counted it. "Congratulations, Miss Bell." Clara took the stamped deed. For years, people had told her the ranch would eventually belong to someone else. A husband, a creditor, a Dawson, anyone but her. Now the deed carried only one name, Clara Bell. She walked outside. Nathan waited beside the horses. Well? Clara held up the paper. Mine. Nathan smiled. Always was. The words hit harder than she expected. Clara folded the deed carefully. What will you do? Nathan frowned. With what? The money. It's your money. No, I mean you. That question had been waiting between them for weeks. The barn was finished. The house was almost rebuilt. The Dawson threat was over. Nathan had no reason to stay, except the reason neither of them had yet said aloud. He looked toward the road. I got a letter yesterday. Clara's stomach tightened. From? Samuel. His brother. Nathan had written to him after returning from Helena. For the first time in 3 years. What did he say? Nathan reached into his coat and handed her the letter. Clara read only the last paragraph. You already tried to serve my sentence once. Don't serve the rest of it by refusing yourself a life. Clara looked up. Nathan's eyes were fixed on the horizon. He gets out next spring. That's good. Yes. But, Nathan exhaled. I kept thinking I had to go back. To Wyoming? To where it happened. Why? To fix something. Clara folded the letter. Can you? No. Then what do you want? Nathan looked at her. The question seemed to frighten him more than any gun ever had. Finally he said, This. Clara's heartbeat quickened. This ranch? You. He stepped closer. The ranch too. She smiled despite herself. Good recovery. Nathan's expression remained serious. I mean it. So do I. He took her hand. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nathan said, I've never owned much. I noticed. A horse, 2 shirts, bad reputation, very impressive holdings. Nathan smiled. But I know how to build fences. I know. And barns. Debatable. And I can learn cattle. You already know cattle. I'm trying to make this speech longer. Clara laughed. Nathan reached into his pocket. Her laughter stopped. He held no diamond, no elaborate gold ring, just a simple silver band. Plain, strong, practical. Clara loved it immediately. Nathan looked more nervous than she had ever seen him. I'm not asking because you need someone to save Bell Ranch. I know. Or because Cedar Ridge thinks you should marry. I know. And if you say no, I'll still... Nathan. He stopped. Clara's eyes burned. You're terrible at this. I warned you. She smiled. Ask me. Nathan swallowed. Clara Bell, will you marry me? She waited just long enough to make him suffer. Then, yes. Nathan exhaled. That took too long. Consider it repayment for all your silence. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Clara looked at it, then at him. Does this mean I still have to pay you $1 a day? Nathan leaned closer. Price went up. To what? 1 dance per week. You don't dance. I'm improving. You stepped on me 4 times at the harvest dance. 3. 4. 3. Clara kissed him before he could continue arguing. They married in June, not because Cedar Ridge expected it, not because Clara needed a husband, and not because Nathan needed someone to forgive him. They married because both of them had spent too many years allowing other people's judgments to decide what they believed they deserved. The ceremony took place beneath the cottonwood beside the barn. Mary cried. Rose cried harder. Josiah pretended dust had gotten in his eye. Benjamin Hale traveled in from Willow Creek and loudly informed everyone that he had predicted the marriage in Helena, which was not remotely true. Samuel Cole was not yet free, but his letter sat in Nathan's coat pocket. When the preacher asked who gave Clara Bell away, silence fell. Clara had planned for that. She stepped forward alone. No one. Several people shifted. Clara smiled. I came here myself. Nathan looked at her, and in front of the same town that once called her unwanted, Clara Bell chose her husband without asking anyone's permission. A year later, the Northern Prairie Station opened. Bell Ranch became one of the busiest cattle stops in the valley. Clara expanded the herd. Nathan built a second barn. This one did not lean. Clara never let him forget how surprised she was. Samuel came to live with them after his release. He stayed 6 months before finding work with the railroad. And little by little, Nathan stopped looking toward the road every time a stranger rode into the yard. He finally learned that staying did not always end in punishment. Clara learned something too. She had spent years believing independence meant needing no one. She had been wrong. Strength was not the absence of love. It was being able to choose love without surrendering yourself to it. One autumn evening, exactly 2 years after the storm that nearly destroyed the barn, Clara stood on its repaired roof replacing a loose shingle. Nathan appeared below. "What are you doing?" "Fixing your terrible workmanship." "My workmanship lasted 2 years." "Barely." He climbed the ladder. Clara looked down. "You don't have to help." Nathan reached the roof. "I know." The words were familiar. Clara smiled. Below them, cattle grazed beneath a golden sky. The railroad whistle sounded in the distance. Cedar Ridge had changed. The ranch had changed. They had changed. Nathan sat beside her. "Still want me to stay?" Clara leaned against his shoulder. "You already know the answer." He took the hammer from her hand. "I like hearing it." Clara looked at the man who had walked through her gate when everyone else stood outside, waiting for her to fail. The man who had never asked her to become smaller so he could feel larger. The man who stayed not because she was helpless, but because she was worth staying for. So Clara Bell gave him the answer. The whole town once believed no man would ever want to hear from her. Stay. Nathan smiled, and he did.